Hey folks, JD here, and today we're looking at this. This is the Air Hogs version of the Star Wars TIE Fighter. Oh, do you know what? I bought this a couple of weeks ago. I've been dying to test this out ever since. There are a couple of different versions of it, a couple of different TIE Fighters out there. This is the Air Hogs version. So let's put everything to one side and let's have a little look at this. Look at that. Beautiful design. Really, really beautiful design. Right down from the lasers on the front, the quadcopter motors and the propellers, as well as the very, very familiar TIE Fighter stylings for anybody that is a bit of a Star Wars aficionado or just a fan. So this is the front, this is the back. You've got your on and off button at the top, you've got your charging port there as well as your infrared receiver right on the top right here as well. Look at that. 4 motors make up this particular quadcopter, as you can see right underneath here. And you do have a little bit of squishy plastic on the bottom there as well. The plastic itself feels quite rigid, but at the same time, and now this may be a little bit of an oxymoron, but it's at the same time feels quite fragile and feels quite frail. Now, I would imagine that that would give you a lot of protection if you come down and if you crash it. Not if you crash it from very fast speeds, but if you do crash it in general, because the plastic itself will bow and it isn't solid enough that it won't just shear off and snap. Now, I like this. I do. I wouldn't say I'm a huge Star Wars fan, but I do like watching the films. I do have quite a collection of Star Wars stuff myself, and this is another thing to add to that collection. Now, as you can see, you've got one screw on the one side of the TIE Fighter wing and another screw the other side as well. It's very important before you fly just to ensure that you screw these up and just to ensure that they are in nice and solid. This copter does not come as a kit, it does come pre-built like this, but you know what I'm like, I just like to ensure that every single flight is nice and safe, and this one is no different. Alright, so there we go. 4 little motors that do have quite nice little aeration holes around the outside as well. That obviously gives you the lift and ensures that the quadcopter can fly. I'm quite intrigued to see how this flies, just simply because it is quite a strange shape for a quadcopter, but I imagine that it would fly quite well, as Air Hogs and Star Wars have both put their names on this particular quadcopter. Alright, so let's put this to one side. Let's have a little look at the transmitter. Now, the transmitter on this particular quadcopter is where it all happens. So, as you can see, we have your left and right analog sticks, no altitude hold. Now, what I find quite strange off the straight away is that these analog sticks feel quite stiff. They aren't quite that fluid, and that it does concern me a little bit. But anyway, more on that whenever we come to fly it. We've got a standard on and off button at the top, and you've got a nice little Star Wars sort of attack screen on here as well. It has a picture of a TIE Fighter on it as well, so when you are battling in the air. You also have an on and off button down the bottom here for sound, so if you turn it on then you will hear sounds of the TIE Fighter, as well as when you do push the shoulder button here, you can fire your lasers and you will hear that come back through the little speakers inside the transmitter here as well. Now, you've got your standard trim buttons. You've also got a charging light here as well. This does allow USB charging only if you have chargeable batteries inside it. Now, another thing to add as well is you've got this little flap here. If you open this flap, you have a little cable. Now, this little cable plugs into the top of the quadcopter. This quadcopter charges directly from this particular transmitter, and I would suggest that you take a few batteries with you, because this particular transmitter does need 6 AA batteries, and I would imagine that as you are charging the quadcopter off this transmitter as well, it is going to drain these batteries quite a lot, so take a few sets with you when you go to fly. Obviously, as I have mentioned, the trim buttons here, but you also have trim buttons left and right on the bottom as well for each of the analog sticks. So there we go. That is pretty much the quadcopter. That is the transmitter as well. Quite nice, feels quite nice in hand. Now, it feels really sturdy. But this does concern me, that this is really quite stiff. We'll see how it flies anyway in the next couple of days. but that is the transmitter as well. I quite like that. So there we go, we've got a little accessory bag that comes with 4 spare propellers for your quadcopter, should you need them, as well as a manual. Okay, so we're going to do a little lap indoors just to see how it fares, then we're going to take her outside and we're going to do a little bit out there. So let's pop on the TIE Fighter, let's pop on the transmitter, automatically binds. As you can see now, both LEDs on the transmitter and on the TIE Fighter are both solid. So with this now, we should just be able to take her straight up. So I'm going to stand back a little bit and we're just going to gently increase the power. Okay. Ooh, look at that. Look at her go. Oh, very responsive. So it's a little bit difficult for me to speak and to hear because this is so loud. So I'm going to do another little lap inside here and then we're going to take her out. Obviously there's no wind or anything like that. There's no... So I think that is going to be it for the indoor. Let's take her out. So here we are on this very frosty morning. Let's take her out. So once again, transmitter on. And TIE Fighter on, automatically binds. You hear that beep beep, that'll let you know that it is bound. So let's take her up. It does take her quite a while to get up to an altitude. Right, she's up. Okay, let's take her up even further. Here we go. Now she's up and now she's flying. And she's flying really well. I did not expect her to fly this well. I expected her to be a little bit sluggish and very much not going to respond in the way that I wanted. But that's totally not the case. She is very, very good. She seems to be flying remarkably well without there being much issue. One thing I have noticed is when you do add the power and you do expect her to increase altitude, it does take her a little while. It does take her a little while to then increase in altitude a little bit. But oh, look at that, it's just awesome to be flying a TIE Fighter. Turning a little bit sluggish, finding the whole joypad, I'm finding the whole controller a little bit difficult because the thumbsticks, your analog sticks, are very stiff. But she flies, look at her go. And you've got, as another little gimmicky bit as well, you've got this little button down here which you can turn on sounds. So as you're flying, you can use your blaster. It does nothing other than gives you a little sound, that's it. But every now and again, you will, as you're flying past, you will hear the sound of a TIE Fighter coming through your transmitter. There we go. Okay, let's turn that off. Let's take her back up. I get the feeling these motors are only just powerful enough to pick this guy up, as it does seem a little bit laboured now and again. But who doesn't want to fly a TIE Fighter? I mean, look at it. As she's struggling to get off the floor, I think the battery is about to go, so I'm going to just land her. Okay, let's land you. So, what are my thoughts on this little guy? Well, okay, let's start with the positive and then let's get over into the negative like we usually do. To begin with, he has good air presence. I mean, look at it. He looks fantastic. He really does look good. The detail is brilliant in this model. It really is good. He has authentic sounds using the TIE Fighter sounds on the transmitter. He flies quite well. Now, if you're going to fly him indoors, as I soon found out, the kitchen I was flying in wasn't overly massive, and he does wallow quite a bit when he moves. So therefore, you are going to have to ensure that when you do fly him indoors, you fly him in quite a large area. Flying him outdoors is okay. Don't forget, this guy is infrared, so therefore he hasn't got a very long reach as it comes to transmission range. What you will find is if you take this guy out in the slightest breeze, he is going to get battered left and right. Now, fortunately, the day that I took this guy out, it was lovely and still it was really quite nice. Therefore he flew really well. Now battery life on this guy is extremely short. I think it's about 5 to 6 minutes if memory serves, and therefore you are going to have to ensure that you take a load of other batteries with you for the transmitter, because this guy charges off that transmitter. So if you just want to have continuous flights, you are going to have to fly him, charge him, fly him, charge him. You are going to have to exchange those batteries in the transmitter. So about the transmitter, what did I think of that? Well, the throttle stick is absolutely awful. Pitch and roll isn't too bad. Yaw is... no. Overall, no. The throttle stick is just absolutely horrible. Now, what I mean by that is this particular throttle feels quite weighted. It feels as if it's going to have a really nice action to it, and it feels as if the quadcopter is then going to relay that really nicely. I didn't think it did. I think it's a little bit stinted. I think the quadcopter could have moved a lot nicer if this stick had a lot nicer action to it. It doesn't matter how slow you throttle up until you get to 50%, and then up to about 65%. The quadcopter does feel a little bit laboured. If you go a little bit further, the quadcopter does take off at quite a rate of knots, so you are going to have to ensure that, that you stay within a nice little level as you are increasing. Now, as with yaw, I found the yaw wasn't brilliant at all. It was really quite stinted and really quite slow, so as I was flying him out and as I was turning him, I actually had to bring him back a little bit to turn him around. Now, pitch, no problem. Positive, negative, not a problem at all. Roll, again, not a problem. What I would say is if you are going to roll him, he does wallow a bit when he rolls. He isn't just like nice back and forth roll movements. So if there is a little bit of a breeze as well, the breeze may catch him and may take him, because these great big sides will act a bit like a sail. Now, the positive for this, as it does seem as if this is just negative. No, it's not just negative. The positive for this, the batteries do last quite a while. You have got the ability to charge off this guy. And now, even though I don't necessarily like a lot of that, because it does mean you are going to have 6 or 8 batteries in a lot of transmitters. This takes 6. It is convenient, so you can just plug it in, leave it charge, make a cup of tea, go out and then fly it around a little bit. Transmission range, again, not a problem. You do have the authentic sounds built into it. That's a nice little gimmicky bit. I didn't have to use any trims whatsoever, so again, that's good. The quadcopter was nicely balanced. So overall, even though the throttle stick is absolutely awful, it does feel as if the transmitter does have some nice bit of weight behind it. It does feel quite sturdy as well, and it does feel as if it's built quite well. All that being said, I would most definitely say if you can get this guy for a cheap price, pick him up. But these are very expensive. Even now, if they're still quite expensive, I honestly wouldn't pay what they're asking for it. If you can get it at a reduced price, then that would be okay. But all in all, even when you do get it, it flies quite well. But I would say keep an eye out for that transmitter. That transmitter just isn't great when it comes to throttle and yaw. So there we are, folks. Thanks ever so much for watching and listening. I've been JD. You've been fantastic as always. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Hello and welcome to all the new subscribers. I hope you're enjoying the channel. So until next time, my friends, happy flying.